Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, most welcome to another session of EU Business Talks. My name is Ante Milevoj, and I have the pleasure to introduce you to our guest of honor today, Mr. Andreas Dressler, company FDI Center based in Berlin, Germany. Andreas, good day to you too. Most welcome.
Thank you, Ante. Thanks for the invitation.
With pleasure. So I assume you are talking with us now at this very moment from Berlin.
That's correct.
So out of curiosity of my personal one, but also our friends here in the room, how are you doing economy-wise as a city, as a country these days and months?
Surprisingly well, I think. The German economy, like quite a few economies, has recovered quite well from last year. City of Berlin has never been exactly an economic powerhouse. Let's put it that way. It's more a city of I think, politicians and artists and other people who have other pursuits, but that's changed in recent years as well. I mean, there are a lot of businesses that have moved here recently. Tesla is building a big factory just outside of the city. So that's moving along quite well. I think the biggest impact has been, like in most big cities in Europe, the lack of tourists this year. I think that's been noticeable for everybody that works in retail, that works in restaurants and entertainment. Those sectors have taken a really big hit.
Okay. Again, I have to ask you also on your city airport. Is it working normally? People are there? Because this is one of the major factors, how you see the normality, you know?
It's open. I've used it a few times. Don't ask me whether I'm a big fan of it or not. There's been a lot of debate around it for the last 20 years, even before the slight 8-year delay in constructing it.
Yeah, exactly.
A debate before that as to whether a city that already has 3 airports, 2 of which are in the city, really needs a brand new airport way outside of the city, but the decision was made. So it's there and it's operating, and it seems to be operating quite well.
Perfect. So, dear friends, we asked the presence of Andreas today with a special reason. Let me read out this for you just so we remind ourselves who Andreas is. Managing Director of FDI Center based in Berlin, Germany. His company is leading advisory firm in the field of foreign direct investment. Andreas and his team, they work around the world with companies, governments, FDI agencies, economic zones, and have experience in delivering investment attraction results in all major geographic regions. Their daughter company is called Location Decisions, one of the only dedicated location advisory and site selection consulting firms in Europe, and works with companies from all industry to identify the best locations and size for new corporate facilities. Wow, it's an interesting business you are in, Andreas. I bet you are, your clients are all sorts of people, but which have one thing in common. They have a surplus of capital that they want to invest. Is my assessment correct?
That's one way to put it. I mean, our clients really fall into 2 groups. On the one hand, the companies that may have a surplus of capital, but typically have other reasons that they want to expand. Either they have a new product that they need to manufacture, or they want to break into new markets, or they need talent and they're looking for talent. So whatever the reasons are, we're helping them find the right location for their facility. And the other group are the governments around the world at all levels, national, regional, state, cities, all the way down to special economic zones, who are looking for those companies. So we're kind of in the middle of these 2 groups. And our work is really related to where do these companies choose to invest and why. It's very practical. We don't work in the policy field. We really work on the day-to-day basis of how companies make location decisions and how governments can attract them.
It sounds like a really interesting business. So I bet you are talking very, very frequently on daily basis with different stakeholders. But my next question, Andreas, is, do customers find you or you find them?
Typically, they find us. So that's it's a good thing. It's a small business, let's put it that way. So this is very much a niche type of advisory. So we have competitors and we have good competitors, but they are not that many, right? So it's quite easy for people to find us. The other thing is it's a small world. So back when we used to be able to travel, a lot of my time was spent on planes and then in different countries around the world, speaking at events, meeting people, building networks, which has really contributed still to the business that we've been generating while we've not been able to travel.
Okay, before you shared with us who your clients are, can you maybe say which is the major part? Are you working mostly with the governments, or what is, because we have different kind of people here in the room, Andreas, you know, from private sector, from governments, from NGO. Can you erase this cake by percentage?
So it's gone back and forth, interestingly. So my background was initially almost exclusively with companies. And then when I started this company, it shifted primarily to governments and specifically the investment promotion agencies of governments. All governments have a specialized agency for this. And over the last 4 or 5 years, the work has been roughly 70–80% governments, the rest private sector. This year, surprisingly, that has almost turned around, where we have a lot more corporate work than government work. So there seems to be, which is very encouraging, a lot of investment activity and a lot of interest from companies from outside of the EU to invest in the EU or to expand their presence here, and that's keeping us pretty busy.
Okay. Before I go forward to the chat box, can you also elaborate with us, Corona? I have to ask you that in terms of your business, of course, how has Corona changed the things you are doing?
Well, there were a lot of concerns, obviously, last year around March, April, when it became clear that this wasn't going to go away in a few weeks. And the concerns were multiple. So one concern was all of the tools that governments can use to find investors, organizing events, going to trade shows, going on road shows, the face-to-face meetings would fall away. As a result of that, there was concern that governments perhaps would not place a lot of emphasis on investment attraction. They would place more emphasis on helping their domestic businesses. And there was also concern that companies would be investing less. So it's safe to say the last concern, that companies would be investing less, did materialize last year. And there was significantly less corporate investment around the world, foreign direct investment. However, governments have been very good at responding, have been very good at moving their activities online, being virtual, being digital. And if anything, they're more interested than ever in attracting investment as part of their economic recovery programs. So we're seeing most governments around the world actually place more emphasis on investment attraction than they were doing before COVID, which of course has had quite a positive effect on our business.
Optimism then. I'm pleased
Yes.
to hear that. Andreas, you have a daughter company or subsidiary location decision. Can you spare a sentence on two on that one?
Yes, that's the part of the business that works with companies. So it's really the same company, but in terms of positioning, image, brand, FDI Center is the part that works with governments. Location decisions is the part that works with companies. The reason behind that is quite simple. They're different target groups, so they require a slightly different approach to generate business from. So we've really separated in terms of brand and in terms of how we go out to market as well.
Okay, dear friends, that's it. Short and sweet about Andreas, about the topic itself. You have basic information. I see your activity in the chat box is also active one. Can I ask you, Matic, to scroll up a little bit so that I go with questions from the very start for Andreas? Thank you very much. The first one I see from France. Hi, France. Thank you for being with us. Are you working also with Slovenia government, and why yes and why not, if I may add?
So, yes, we've actually done a little bit of work with the Slovenian government last year with Spirit Slovenia. That's your national investment promotion agency, and the project was based around finding companies that were interested in investing in Slovenia. That's also part of what we do is active business development, or as it's called, lead generation. In other words, trying to find companies from different countries and different sectors that have an interest in a particular country. So we did work with Spirit Slovenia last year.
Okay. Is there a pressure to find industrial locations for European industry due to situation with China in EU or geographical Europe like Bosnia, Serbia? Andreas.
Okay, I'm going to have to try and interpret that question.
Please, go ahead.
So, situation with China, typically the situation with China is interpreted as companies are leaving China and companies are reshoring. So there is a belief or maybe a hope that because of political tensions, because of supply chain disruptions experienced last year, a lot of companies may be leaving China, European companies or even North American companies, and moving their manufacturing back home or closer to home, which would then be called nearshoring. The evidence is that that is not really happening, or not to the extent that people would like. It's not a very popular view because a lot of governments are waiting for this to happen, but it's not really happening to the extent that is maybe anticipated. So what has happened is, even before COVID, a lot of companies that were in China for cost reasons, because it was a low-cost place to make toys or other simple things, already moved their production to Myanmar, to Cambodia, to Vietnam. Vietnam, one of the big winners of this. So the notion that they would bring that back to a high-cost place like Europe is difficult. Now, after the crisis, the companies that are still in China are going to remain there because China continues to be a very lucrative market for them. Let's not forget, China is one of the world's biggest markets. In some industries like automotive, it's the world's biggest market. Big automotive companies like Volkswagen make well over a third of their revenue and profits in China. So the idea that they would suddenly pull out and move that somewhere else is just not, it's not a rational idea. So this reshoring is not going to happen in my view, but there's also evidence to back this up to the extent that people would like. There are isolated instances of it happening. So there are companies who have been maybe asked by their customers to come closer to home. Perhaps they're supplying something that's important to a European customer and the customer would like them to be closer. There are companies that have been asked or incentivized by governments to come closer to home, primarily in areas such as pharmaceuticals. So there will be some cases of companies moving to Europe or back to Europe. And in those cases, countries like Bosnia, Serbia, really I guess the periphery of the European Union will be attractive options.
Okay, let me just give you a sub-question on that. Are you having, Andreas, customers like that who are returning from Far East back to Europe?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
So we have anecdotal information, and once in a while you'll read a case, where a company says, yes, we've moved our production of whatever it is, paracetamol or active pharmaceutical ingredients, whatever we were making in China before, we've moved some of that back closer to home, either to the Americas or to Europe, but it really is only isolated cases. Okay.
Luca is with us from Rome, I believe, if he's still not on his holidays. Does your firm work with assisting IFAs like World Bank as well in helping government do FDIs? It's a good question.
It is, and the answer is yes. So that's another interesting development. A lot of the international development agencies have become more active in FDI over the last year or two. So if you look at the EBRD, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, the African Development Bank, plus all the development agencies like GIZ or GIZ in Germany, they all have discovered a strong interest in this field because it's, again, something that governments like. And it's something that, if you do it well, can generate pretty quick results, or at least tangible results. So we're currently doing a couple of projects with the Inter-American Development Bank in Colombia. So working with the Colombian National Investment Promotion Agency, and those projects are funded by the Inter-American Development Bank.
Oh my goodness, Luca, I see you smiling. I think, I take it you will do some follow-up ASAP, I guess. You do that. Vinayak is with us from India. Do you have companies wanting to set up presence in India? How are you related with India, Indian market, Indian businesses, Andreas?
So the answer to that is maybe. We actually have, and obviously this is not a forum. I typically cannot mention names of corporate clients, government clients, yes, but not corporate clients. But we're hopefully close to starting a project with a company, a European company that's looking at a place to set up a new factory to serve, the broader, I guess, Middle East, South Asian region. And one of the countries that they are considering is India. So they're also looking at the UAE, they're looking at India, they're looking at a few North African countries. So India is in the mix there.
Okay. David, if I'm not mistaken, from Luxembourg, interested in Luxembourg with Lux Innovation as an FDI agency. Andreas?
Good to know. We just actually, you're not going to like this, David, but we just eliminated Luxembourg from one of our analyses for a company that is looking for a place to put a very large multilingual service center. So they're looking for a place which can accommodate 300 to 400 employees speaking a whole range of languages. And Luxembourg was in the mix because of the language skills, but ultimately it's a very expensive place, especially when you compare it to some of the Central and Eastern European cities that also have a large number of people speaking languages.
Well, David, I would still advise you to fight, as it is after every rain, you have just sun and nothing else. Martin is with us from France. Did you work with Africa? What is your CV with Africa, Andreas?
We're starting to. So Africa is very popular these days. It's popular with the development banks. So a lot of African governments have been getting a lot of funding for investment traction. The World Bank is extremely active there. The UK government with their development arm is funding investment promotion in Africa. Obviously, the Francophone countries are getting a lot of support. So there are a lot of consultants who are very active in Africa. Now, we've just finished a project which is funded or was funded by UNIDO out of Geneva. And that was to develop strategies for agro-industrial parks in Ethiopia. So the Ethiopian government, with UNIDO's help, has set up several parks throughout the country to do agricultural processing. And we developed the investment attraction strategies for those. We're hoping that, given the situation in Ethiopia now, which is not too stable, that this will actually be implemented, because a lot of work has gone into it, not just by us, but by people before us. This has been a 3-4 year process. But we just completed that part of the project, which is ultimately the final part, helping these industrial parks to put in place a plan for attracting FDI.
Okay. A sub question again, before I see next question in the chat box, Andreas. I'm always astonished when we are talking about Africa, as almost this is one market for us outside the continent. But as you know, of course, there are more than 1,000 languages, 54 countries, numerous language backgrounds, social, colonial backgrounds. How in your line of business, are you putting these countries together, or you have a tailor-made approach country by country?
So we obviously separate the countries. We'll look at each country individually. But we normally, in fact, we always urge companies to move very quickly away from the level of countries to the level of regions or cities within countries. Because some things can be compared quite well at a country level. I mean, countries have a corporate tax rate, countries have regulations, countries have other factors that affect the business environment, but the real factors that influence the ability of a company to operate are really regional and local factors. So take even very small countries, take Slovenia, where I've been once for work. I mean, Slovenia is a pretty small country, but there are big differences between Ljubljana and somewhere on the Hungarian border, right? There are differences in workforce availability, difference in costs. So then you apply that to large countries. So take countries like India that was mentioned, or countries like Turkey. India is a case in point where you've got extremely independent states with their own regulations. You've got different languages. It makes really no sense to compare India with Turkey. You really have to move down to the level of states, regions, cities, and even specific zones within those countries for the comparison to be meaningful.
True again, Andreas. Let me go forward and do I see correctly? Andre from Brazil, Sao Paulo. Do you have any experiences with Brazil?
I do, actually. One of the ones I'm most proud of. So many years ago, I worked with, and this one I can mention because it's public. It's a long time ago. So I worked with a Korean company that probably everybody knows called Hyundai, who were looking to set up a factory in Latin America. And it took us a long time, but we ultimately helped them find a spot just outside of Sao Paulo called Piracicaba. And they've built a factory there, and it's been producing for 3 or 4 years, or even a little bit longer, I think, than that. It employs almost 1,000 people. And that's one of the, I think, the most satisfying parts of my job, is that if things go well, you see a real tangible result. It's not just a report with some graphs and some statistics. At the end of the day, something is built, something is created, people get jobs, it triggers economic development. You know, a lot of other people probably took credit for that project, but you know, I like to think that I played a little role in helping the company invest there as well.
Very well, nicely said. Andreas, you will be surprised if you allow me. And Andre has moved to Sao Paulo some 20 plus years ago. And you know why? To build up an automotive factory. Can you imagine?
Okay.
Yeah. So you guys will be sharing your experience with bars nearby Sao Paulo, I guess, soon. Huh?
Good. So who knows, we may have met, actually.
Yeah. Let me go forward. Hugh is with us from Malta. I ask, what is the average amount dedicated to different investment projects? Is there a capping on investment, Andreas?
So in terms of, I guess, the capital expenditure,
yeah,
this ranges. So we're working on a project right now, which is a biotechnology plant, a factory, and the company is planning to invest 600 million euros. So that's pretty big. But we're also working on another project, the customer service center I told you about, where the capex is really low. I mean, the company is going to rent an office. There's not going to be major equipment in there other than phones and laptops. So capex there is really low. So it just ranges completely depending on the type of project. Would fintech and AI be of interest? Certainly. I mean, I know Malta a little bit, and fintech, I think, could be quite interesting for Malta, along the same lines as what you've done in gaming, which has been a huge success. And AI is also a really active sector. AI is a tricky one because you really need to have very specialized skills. So unless you've got the talent and the talent has the right skills, I wouldn't even try to attract AI investments, because there are locations in Europe that do offer those types of skills.
Okay. Andre is following up that he knows your people in Hyundai, Sao Paulo. Okay, so this is an icebreaker for you guys. I see Is it Slobodan? I guess. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Slobodan. Can you please list just few activities of your company that the companies are looking for and are complementary to the services offered by government agencies? I'm talking about IPA in EU, Andreas.
Yes. So I think the main driver today is talent, right? So companies are looking for skills, and it doesn't matter which type of industry or project we're working in. Number one is skills. So let me give you some examples. So I told you we're working for a biotech company. They are looking for people who have skills, experience, or at least have been trained in production, good manufacturing practice in the pharmaceutical industry, highly specialized. The company that I told you about that's planning to set up a service center is looking for people with a bachelor's degree that speak 2 or 3 languages. You know, people who maybe have a degree in economics, but also speak French or Italian or Spanish or German in addition to their native language. We're about to start a project with a company that is going to assemble charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. It's a very manual process, surprisingly, not very high tech. They're looking for, actually, in some cases, older, and this sounds a little bit discriminatory, they're looking for older women because the work requires a lot of dexterity, concentration.
In positive sense of this word, I guess.
Precisely. So it's similar to, you know, in the south of Serbia, if there's anyone from Serbia, there are some wire harness facilities, companies like Leoni who have a lot of women working there. So everybody's looking for talent, but what IPAs, to get back to the question, often fail to do is demonstrate that they have the talent. They'll say they have the talent, but when we ask them to prove it and say, can you demonstrate how many people you have with these skills? Can you provide us real information on how we can find, or our client can find people with these skills or this profile? They struggle to have that information. It would make it a lot easier for them to attract investment, and they would be a lot more convincing if they were to have that data available.
There you go, Slobodan. The next one is from Paul Lee. If I'm not mistaken, you are with us from Taipei, Taiwan. How about carbon capture and reuse tech project, Andreas?
So a little bit of experience. It's one of the things we explored a few years ago for Iceland. We've done some work with the National Energy Company of Iceland, who are also very active in attracting investment to Iceland. And they wanted to explore new sectors in addition to what they have. They have a lot of data centers. They have industries that consume a lot of electricity. And carbon capture or carbon reuse was one of the things that we looked at, because it's a very energy intensive process. Transforming carbon into something else, CO2 into something else. So it's something that we explored, and it's an exciting sector, but our experience there is quite limited.
We're entering last 2 minutes or 3 minutes, dear friends. It's been a very active session. I have a number of questions myself, Andreas, for you as well, but I will limit myself only on 2 basic ones. First of all, can you elaborate forward what is now the current issue with inward investments globally, maybe, or any specifics regionally? And also, what is your say about greenfield, brownfield type of investments going on, again, globally, regionally? Can you shortly elaborate on that?
Yes, so to your first question, the projections for this year globally are pretty bad. So UNCTAD, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, they put out data on FDI. They're the ones who had the data that showed last year FDI fell by 42% globally. Their projections for this year were a further decline, which I'm sure globally will hold true, but it doesn't hold true everywhere. So I think the US, certainly when I speak to my colleagues, competitors, counterparts in the US, they're as busy as they've ever been. So there's a lot of investment in the US. I think the EU is experiencing a lot of investment, because a lot of the investment activities in sectors where the EU is very well positioned, things related to sustainability, things related to knowledge, to high tech. So I think Africa is going to continue to attract investment. Investment into China is down significantly. So it varies depending on where you're looking in the world. Investment into Latin America is down in many countries. Investment in Serbia is up. Serbia is doing really well. So varies from country to country. To your second point, really good question. Most governments and IPAs are trying to attract greenfield investment. It's what everybody wants. But I think they should be more open to new forms of investment, not just brownfield. Particularly in knowledge-intensive industries, a lot of companies grow by acquisition. They want to buy a business, or perhaps they simply want to enter a country to test their technology, or they want to enter a country to have an R&D partnership with the university. And a lot of our clients, IPAs, won't accept that because it's not what they're tasked to do. They're tasked to attract greenfield investment that creates a lot of jobs now, whereas those types of projects may not create any jobs in the short term. But I see them as a very important base for building up the relationships to companies which will lead to projects in the future.
Oof, it's 31 minutes past the hour, Andreas. You've been a great guest, and it is really our pleasure, let me put it this way, to host you today here. Before we let you go to your further challenges, I would dare to ask you the following. The thing that I always ask my guests at the end: what is Andreas Dressler about when he's not working?
So that's a very good question, because usually I'm working, but one of the big benefits of lockdown, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this, has been more time with family. So I haven't seen my children as much as I have in the last year and a half, as I probably had their whole lives before, which has been fantastic. And the other one is sports, which has been a good balance to lockdown, is being, being able to exercise, not being jet lagged, being able to actually take care of your health. So that's been a very good thing as well.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Once again, on behalf of the whole room, I wish you a very steady, good business forward, but also a very good continuation of your private life. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Ante.
Dear friends, that was it. I will leave you in peace now. Our next guest next Tuesday, this time will be Alexander Horvat from Bratislava, Slovakia. I wish you a nice day forward. And if you are with us from Tokyo, I wish you a great evening. Katsui-san. Take care. Bye-bye.